Well, hello and welcome back to Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. I hope you're doing well and I hope that you are staying safe and remembering to wash your hands. Very important at this time. Behind me is an image of neighbourly fun. Two different groups of people having a conversation together. And today what we're going to think about Judaism is the way that Judaism is one religion but has a number of different groups within that which all help with understanding about their faith and different practices that are linked with it. So today we're going to think about Jewish denominations, focusing on the denominations of Orthodox and Reform. And it's really important for your C questions if you're doing Educast that you understand the difference between Orthodox and Reform, because you will need to write about two different religious traditions, and that will have to be Orthodox and Reform Judaism. Now there are other forms of Judaism out there, but I'm only going to focus on these two as they're the easiest for us to maybe get on. So this is the time that you need to grab your pen and a piece of paper. Make sure that you've got the links in the description below. I'm going to play the cheesy intro music and then you'll come back to me and we'll get on straight away. Okay, so welcome back. The first thing I'd like you to do is to draw a line on a bit of paper straight across. Okay, a line on a bit of paper, it could be in your book, straight across. And at one end you're going to write don't agree, and at the other end you're going to write strongly agree. Okay, so one line, one end you're going to write don't agree, and the other end you're going to write strongly agree. And you might want to do this with a member of your household. Could be a bit of fun, this. Well, it's my idea of fun, so it might not be yours. So let's do that now. Draw that line. Okay, so our first one is do not steal. Okay, so we're going to call that number 1. I'd like you to write number 1 on that line. Where would you put that as a rule? Would you say that that's under don't agree or strongly agree or somewhere between the two? So just write number 1 on the line, whereabouts you think do not steal would fall. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Do not kill. Okay, now obviously you can interpret that statement on a number of ways, so you need to interpret that the way that you want to. So number 2, do not kill. Do you put that as a don't agree or strongly agree or whereabouts in between? Number 3, do not walk on the grass. I'm sure you've seen those signs at some point where you've gone past what looks to be really nice grass and it says do not walk on this grass, and you're then really tempted, like the buttons that say do not push, and you're like, I really want to push it now. So where would you put number 3, do not walk on the grass? Is that a rule that you would not agree with or a rule that you would strongly agree with? Okay, number 4 then. Do not steal unless you are starving. Do not steal unless you are starving. Number 4, where would you put that? Do not steal unless you are starving. Number 5, do not kill animals for meat. There's one for the vegetarians and vegans among us. Do not kill animals for meat. Number 5, where would you put that? Number 6, do not walk on the grass unless you're playing football. Do not walk on the grass unless you're playing football. Number 7, do not steal unless you're starving and unless you want the thing and cannot afford it. Okay, do not steal unless you're starving, unless you want the thing and you cannot afford it. That's number 7. Where would you put that? Number 8. Do not kill animals for meat or plants for food. Number 8. Do not kill animals for meat or plants for food. And lastly, number 9. Do not walk on the grass unless you're playing football or you just want to be a rebel. Do not walk on the grass unless you're playing football or you just want to be a rebel, number 9. Okay, so what you have on your list now is you've got a huge list of different rules, and you've also made decisions of where you would put yourself on that rule list. Now, if you've been doing that with somebody else as well, it'd be interesting to compare your answers to theirs, because ultimately your interpretation of those rules will make a decision on how your relationship with the other people you've been doing this activity with. So for some of you, you'll be agreeing with people. For others of you, you'll be disagreeing with people. And ultimately, when we think about the Jewish mitzvot, the 613 laws that we read about in the Torah, then what we're thinking about is a religion which tries to encompass people who have lots of beliefs, 613 laws in fact, plus countless other interpretation of those laws. So different groups of those will interpret those differently. So for example, some might keep the Shabbat laws, but others might say that temple worship is no longer relevant. Some might say that mold growing on the side of your tent isn't any relevant anymore in terms of destroying your tent, where others would say, well, that's within the Torah, so therefore we must do it. So Jews kind of lump themselves together and get into different denominations, different groups, and that's what we're thinking of today. So in your books, this is our title: what are the differences in Jewish belief and practice? What are the differences in Jewish belief and practice? Just get that written down now and make sure you underline it neatly with a ruler, please. Okay, so our learning objectives today are to investigate the differences of belief and practice in Judaism. So our literacy objective is to extract information from various sources. So looking at our learning outcomes then, a good outcome would be if you could explain the 2 differences between Jewish denominations. Great if we can summarize information from a range of sources and think about why different Jews might believe different things. And even better if we can use some specialist terms and link all that information studied into a detailed piece of work as well. So we're going to be reviewing our information, and we're going to be thinking about a spiritual and social, spiritual being what we think ourselves. Okay, so you've got an idea what we're going to be looking at during today's lesson. Then we've got a media clip we're going to watch. You're going to think about the differences between Reform and Orthodox Judaism, and then there's a letter to Bob. Don't know why it's called Bob, don't know anyone called Bob, however, thought we could write a letter to him anyway. So moving on very briefly. The first thing we're going to do then is I've got a media clip that I found on YouTube which goes through Jewish denominations really well. So I'm going to hand over to that random clip that I found now. I'd like you to watch this, and then we're going to look at an activity in a few moments with that. So 3, 2, 1, random media clip, go.
Today we'll be exploring 3 of the main denominations of Judaism. Known often as movements, the differences between these groups can at times seem rather slight. Add to this that there's a wide range of beliefs within each of the movements, and the lines between the groups can be a bit blurry. For this reason, we'll keep things very simple, just hitting on the hallmarks of each movement. We'll get the ball rolling with Orthodox Judaism. As the term Orthodox implies, Orthodox Judaism is the most fundamental and conservative branch of Judaism. It asserts that the Hebrew Bible is the true Word of God, and that the Hebrew laws of the Talmud and the Torah are to be strictly adhered to in everyday life. To an Orthodox Jew, the ancient texts weren't just for days of old. They're still applicable today. If they say no one works during Shabbat or the Jewish day of Sabbath and rest, then no one works. It doesn't matter if this is inconvenient in modern life and times. If Jewish law states it, you obey it. As a whole, Orthodox Judaism holds firmly to the ancient belief that God promised the land of Israel as an inheritance to the Jews. In other words, the Hebrew Bible says God gave the land of Israel to them back in ancient times, and therefore it's still theirs. With this in mind, it's easy to see why Orthodox Jews seek to retain their distinctive Jewish identity within the modern culture. Being rather easy to remember, we could sum it up by saying Orthodox Jews want to remain Orthodox. With Orthodox Judaism covered, let's move on to its opposite of sorts, Reform Judaism. Unlike Orthodox Judaism, Reform Judaism seeks to fit Judaism into the modern world. Beginning in the 18th century, Reform Judaism does not hold the ancient Jewish texts as an authority in the modern world. Some would go as far as to say that Reform Jews see the ancient laws as optional. Adding to this, Reform Jews see their faith as being fluid and changing. For instance, Reform Judaism has removed all ancient references to animal sacrifice and worship. It has also removed the assertion that Israel belongs solely to the Jews. As for sacred observances, most Reform Jews have abandoned the Orthodox practice of only using the Hebrew language in worship. Instead, they use the language of the culture. To state it very simply, a Reformed synagogue in the U.S. will worship in English, and in France they'd worship in French. It also allows men and women to take part in worship together. To sum up this sect of Judaism, and to really oversimplify, Reform Judaism has reformed Judaism to make it fit in the modern world. Like most faiths, Judaism has over time broken into different movements or denominations. There is Orthodox Judaism, which is the most fundamental branch of Judaism. Followers of Orthodox Judaism strictly adhere to the teachings of the Hebrew Bible and the Talmud. They also believe that Israel belongs to the Jews. Reform Judaism does not hold ancient Jewish law as an authority for modern living. It also doesn't assert that Israel is the sole property of the Jews. Adding to this, Reform Judaism has adapted to changing times by allowing women to worship with men, while also abandoning Hebrew as the only language used in worship. In short, Reform Jews have reformed their faith in order to fit it into the modern world.
Okay, welcome back. So hopefully now you'll be able to explain two differences in Jewish denominations, which brings us to our Reform or Orthodox tick list. So what you've got in the description is you've got the worksheet behind me that is linked to the Google Drive where the information is for you. You don't have to use that if you don't want. You could do a T-table and write each of them out, but the joy of having them printed for you there in front of you is that you can then edit that, and you can just put little X's or comments in each box as well. So what you need to do is you need to look at the statements that are on the screen behind me and sort them into which ones you think are orthodox and which ones are true for the Reformed tradition. So, for example, I'll give you the first one for free. Fits life around the religion. Well, that has to be orthodox because it's about fitting their life around what they believe. If it was the other way around, it would be Reformed because that's fitting their religion around their life. Whereas Orthodox Jews would say you have to fit your life around your religion. So that's the first one for you. So go through the rest and just work out if they're Orthodox or Reform. You need to pause this clip now, thank you. Okay, so for those of you using my worksheet, I'm about to now go over the answers for you. So if you haven't finished, make sure that you have paused this clip. So for those of you using my worksheet, you will see at the bottom there's another grid that you can complete, but this is just a way of checking it. So the blue ones on this list are the Reform statements and the black ones are the Orthodox statements. I've made a mistake with the top one, fitting life around religion. We've already talked about that. That is in fact Orthodox, not Reform. That was my deliberate mistake on my PowerPoint. I'm sure you probably had noticed that by now. So those of you that have got the grids, then you can do that at the bottom. Those of you that have written that as a T-table, you can go through and just double check that you've got those correct. So again, pause this clip and make sure you've got down what you need to. Okay, so hopefully what we've got behind me then is we've done our good outcome, which is explaining two differences between Jewish denominations. Great if you can summarize that information from a range of sources. So we've watched a clip and then we've done a little bit more thinking about that as well. So we're now going to move on to our letter with Bob. So what you're going to do is using any information that you can research online. Normally I'd have some books that unfortunately due to copyright I can't give you those. What you need to do is you need to think about all of the work we've studied from the Tanakh overview, the Jewish Chronicles, the one with the little shape diagram, all the way through to now. And you're going to write a letter to Bob. Now it doesn't have to be Bob, you can choose who you want to write it to, and you're going to write it about Judaism. Now there is a success criteria behind me. There's also a template available in the Google Drive in the link below if you've already clicked on that. And I think it would be a really good overview to demonstrate your understanding of Judaism so far. Please do send that through to your teachers via email when you've done it, because I think that would be a really good encouragement for us as we're planning work for you to know that you've understood what it is that we're looking at. So there's a success criteria behind me. This will hopefully take you about 20 minutes or so. There's obviously a link in the Google Drive as well. So pause this clip and then come back to me when you've got that task completed. Brilliant. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of today's work. As our sort of plenary activity, maybe take a photograph of your letter and just WhatsApp it or send it on Messenger or Instagram or whatever you might do to one of your friends in your class and see if they can do a little BBI for you. What did they think you did well? What question would they want to ask you, and what would your response be to that? So can I thank you for your work so far in this unit? As I say, next time I'm going to do a little bit on exam technique with you before posing an exam to my pupils in particular, but I'm sure your teachers will have something available for you if you were desperate to have one. But may I for the moment thank you for your time today. Stay safe, wash hands, take care, God bless, and I'll see you next time.